President Trump says Iran nuclear talks are on. He calls it direct. Iran says it's not. With diplomacy on play, are we heading toward peace or just a trick before things get worse? These and many more will be detailed in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Akar. Let's begin. In a surprise declaration, President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. is entering direct talks with Iran over its nuclear program, calling the upcoming meeting very high level and set for Saturday. However, Iran quickly countered, stating the talks in Oman would be indirect and mediated by Omani officials, a reminder that diplomacy with Tehran remains as complex as ever. Well, with both sides framing the negotiations on different terms, is this a genuine diplomatic breakthrough or just a geopolitical mirage? Sitting beside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Oval Office, here's what President Trump has to say concerning the talks.
But hopefully, we're not going to have to get into that. We are meeting very importantly on Saturday at almost the highest level. We'll see how it works out. There's no military like our military, and despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, and one of the dumbest situations, I think, and maybe the most embarrassing situation we've ever been involved in, that short period of time in Afghanistan. What a disgrace that was, but left a lot of our military behind, left. You see them in their annual parades where they're parading trucks that are armor-plated and different things that they can't, but it's many billions of dollars we left behind. But despite that, we have a tremendous military. That was a very small portion, because we rebuilt the military during my first term, and we have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget which is in the facility. You'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong, because you have a lot of bad forces out there now.
Trump's rhetoric right there shows the stark contrast in tone. One part diplomacy, one part threat. This raises questions about how committed each side truly is to peace over posturing. Now, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi posted on X that the meetings will be indirect, facilitated by Oman's Foreign Minister Bard al-Busaidi. Iran retreated its stance. It would not yield to what it views as Washington's pressured tactics. However, is Iran signaling flexibility here, or are they setting the stage to blame the U.S. for a breakdown in talks? We see that U.S. Presidential Envoy Steve Witkoff will represent Washington during this process. These meetings follow a history of failed nuclear diplomacy, including indirect talks during the Biden administration and the collapse of Obama-era 2015 nuclear deal, which Trump pulled out of in 2018. Meanwhile, tensions have been high in the region, with recent conflict in Gaza and Lebanon, missile strikes in Yemen, and Israeli-Iranian exchanges of fire. Trump has boasted that the U.S. military presence since returning to office in January 28th. Although he insists war is not the goal. Trump said on March 7th that he wrote to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, to propose talks, an unusual direct outreach. Yet, Khamenei remains publicly skeptical. As recently as February, he declared that direct talks with the U.S. were not smart, wise, or honorable. For direct diplomacy to move forward, his blessings is essential. Iran's leadership structure is such that no high-level agreement can proceed without Khamenei's green light. Well, given these deep-rooted ideological divisions, can any lasting deal survive the political realities in both Washington and Tehran? Right here in a new development, here's a report. U.S.-Russia space partnership continues as Soyuz launches American astronaut. But can science survive politics? That's a sharp contrast. Despite deepening tensions between Washington and Moscow, a Russian Soyuz rocket carrying an American astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts successfully launched toward the International Space Station. Well, the mission, featuring NASA's Jonathan Kim and Russia's Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubrytsky, is being celebrated by Russian officials as proof that space remains a rare arena for cooperation between the two geopolitical adversaries. But then, with global divisions growing and with the International Space Station nearing retirement, can symbolic moments in space endure without a broader shift in political will? Here is a joyous celebration. Kirill Dmitriev, President Vladimir Putin investment envoy and a key advocate for mending U.S.-Russia relations, praised the launch as a continuation of an enduring relationship that dates back to the 1970s. But then that year marked the first joint U.S.-Soviet crewed space mission, where an Apollo spacecraft docked with a Soviet Soyuz capsule, an act that came to symbolize Cold War detente and scientific diplomacy in the midst of political rivalry. Now, this launch proves that Russian and U.S. cooperation in the space industry continues today. Dmitriev said in a statement posted to his Telegram channel alongside a video of the Soyuz MS-27 rocket lifting off. The spacecraft is scheduled to dock with the International Space Station at about 09:04 GMT, according to Russia's space agency, Roscosmos. And notably, the launch comes even as U.S. sanctions against Moscow over the war in Ukraine have halted or strained collaboration in many other sectors. Space, however, has remained an exception, a neutral zone of sorts where shared goals, technological interdependence, and global science prevail, at least for now. Moving on, Dmitriev, who visited Washington last week for informal talks, has also floated the potential areas of future cooperation, including U.S.-Russian investment in the Arctic and rare earth development. He even suggested Russia could provide a nuclear power unit for a future Mars mission. That's a bold idea that would require intense coordination with Western private sectors like SpaceX and its CEO, Elon Musk. Well, could technological partnerships in space become the unexpected foundation for resetting broader diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Russia? Still, uncertainty clouds the horizon. Russia has announced plans to withdraw from the International Space Station in the near future and build its own orbital station, with the first 2 modules set for launch by 2027. In parallel, Moscow is expanding space collaboration with China, signaling a possible geopolitical realignment in space exploration. Right there, as the International Space Station nears the end of its lifespan, questions mount over whether long-standing partnerships can survive a world order increasingly shaped by mistrust, militarization, and even regional blocs. Will global space cooperation evolve into a fragmented race for dominance, or can nations overcome Earth's divisions to pursue common goals beyond the atmosphere? A critical question the world leaders need to look into. But then, In a new development, South Korea has officially scheduled a snap presidential election for June 3rd, following last week's stunning removal of Yoon, the former president, who was impeached after invoking martial law in December. Now, the sudden leadership vacuum comes at a time of rising U.S. tariffs under President Donald Trump and growing economic uncertainty in Asia's fourth largest economy. With power shifting and old wounds resurfacing, will these elections stabilize the nation or deepen its political divides and weaken trust in democratic institutions? Well, at a cabinet meeting, Acting President Han Duck-soo confirmed the date, saying the timeline gives political parties enough space to prepare. Yoon's dramatic ousting last Friday, triggered by his attempt to deploy military forces to halt parliament proceedings, has ignited a fierce new political race that could reshape both domestic policies and Seoul's key alliances with Washington. Meanwhile, Yoon's former labor minister Kim Moon-joo resigned and declared his presidential run, citing pressure from the public and a sense of duty to solve national challenges. Although he isn't formally part of Yoon's People Power Party, Kim is polling better than other conservatives, and he is positioning himself as a candidate of unity in what he calls a severe national crisis. Now, his message appears to aim at rebuilding the conservative base, which has been fractured by two presidential impeachments in a single decade. Also joining him is Ahn Cheol-soo, a PPP lawmaker who was the first in his party to vote for Yoon's impeachment, presenting himself as cleaner than anyone else, and is pushing a future-oriented economic agenda focused on artificial intelligence and innovation, and implicit critique of Trump's protectionist trade policies that have seized South Korea's exports. Now, is Ahn's tech-driven pitch enough to rebuild over confidence in the party still reeling from political scandal and public backlash, and is no stranger to presidential campaigns? He ran in 3 previous elections, gaining a notable 21% of the vote in 2017, but failing to break through in subsequent races. Polls now place him below the top contenders, but his entry adds complexity to a fragmented conservative field. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Liberal Democratic Party, and it's like they are rallying behind Lee Jae-myung, a populist who narrowly lost to Yoon in 2022. Though Lee leads in recent polls with 34% support in a Gallup survey, his legal troubles may shadow his campaign. He faces trials for bribery and election law violations. But insiders say he's expected to resign as Democratic Party leader announced his candidacy within days. Well, coming now to the conclusion of this report, with conservatives divided and the left rallying around a controversial but popular figure, South Korea is bracing for one of its most unpredictable elections in recent history. Adding to the drama, Yoon still faces criminal charges for insurrection, with his trial set to begin April 14. The Constitution mandates that elections be held within 60 days of a presidential vacancy, putting the nation on a fast and tense political timeline. And I believe this is very necessary at this time in a nation torn between reforms, revenge, and resilience. Can this election truly heal the fractures that have defined South Koreans' politics in recent years? Until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Remember, we're bringing you recent happenings from the home front at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day and stay safe.